Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Run. Don't look back. Just run. The thought hammered against the inside of Lysander's skull, a desperate rhythm syncing with the frantic beat of his heart. The rain in the Neo sector didn't wash things clean. It only made the grime on the pavement slicker, turning the neon-drenched alleyways into treacherous slides of oil and water. Lysander's ceremonial white suit, tailored to highlight the slender curve of his waist for a husband he hadn't chosen, was now a ruin of mud and torn silk. He gasped, his lungs burning as the freezing air clawed at his throat, but stopping was not an option. Behind him, the distant wail of sirens and the heavy, mechanical thrum of hover drones signaled that the hunt was on. He wasn't just a runaway groom. In the eyes of the high families, he was stolen property. Lysander skidded around a corner, his dress shoes struggling for purchase on the wet concrete. He had to reach the dead zone, the abandoned industrial district where the sensor grids of the elite city center faded into static. It was a place of ghosts and rust, where no respectable Omega of the silver lineage would dare tread. But tonight, the monsters lurking in the shadows of the dead zone were preferable to the monster waiting for him in the bridal chamber. The memory of Lord Silas's hand, heavy with signet rings, clamping onto the back of his neck earlier that evening sent a fresh spike of adrenaline through Lysander's veins. "You will learn silence, little bird," Silas had whispered, his breath smelling of stale brandy and cruelty. Asterisk, "or I will clip your wings until you cannot stand, let alone fly." Asterisk. Lysander shook the voice from his head, ducking under a rusted pipe that hissed steam into the deluge. He was the last of the Vane family line, a lineage once proud, now destitute, sold off to the brutish house of Silas to pay debts incurred by a father who cared more for gambling than his son's soul. But Lysander possessed a spirit that even years of conditioning hadn't fully broken. Tonight, he had chosen death over submission. He stumbled, his knee striking the pavement hard enough to tear skin. He bit back a cry, scrambling up as a shadow passed overhead. A drone. It scanned the adjacent street with a beam of harsh blue light. Lysander pressed himself into a recessed doorway, his chest heaving, his hands trembling uncontrollably. He needed shelter. Not just a shadowy corner, but walls. A roof. Somewhere to mask his scent. The heavy suppressants he had taken were wearing off, washed away by adrenaline and sweat. Soon, the sweet, distress-filled scent of a terrified Omega would act like a beacon to every alpha in a 5-mile radius. He looked up. The doorway he huddled in belonged to what looked like a derelict cathedral of industry, an old power station, or perhaps a factory from the pre-war era. The massive iron doors were rusted shut, but a smaller service entrance stood slightly ajar, darkness spilling out like ink. It looked like the mouth of a beast. Lysander didn't care. He squeezed through the gap, the jagged metal snagging his ruined suit, and collapsed onto the cold, dusty floor inside. Silence. The roar of the rain was muffled here, replaced by the heavy, oppressive stillness of the vast interior. It was pitch black, save for the occasional flash of lightning through the high, shattered windows. Lysander lay on the floor, trying to quiet his breathing, listening for the drones outside. Then he heard it. A low, guttural growl. It wasn't human. It sounded like tectonic plates grinding together, a sound of pure, unadulterated suffering and rage. Lysander froze, his blood turning to ice. He wasn't alone. The air in the warehouse shifted. It grew heavy, dense, and suffocating. A scent hit him, not the smell of rot or mildew, but something sharper, more terrifying. Ozone. Burnt cedar. The metallic tang of fresh blood. And underneath it all, the overwhelming, crushing pressure of alpha pheromones at a concentration that should have been impossible. It was the scent of a rut, but not a normal cycle. This was a feral, violent instability that usually only occurred when an alpha of extreme potency was wounded or poisoned. Lysander tried to scramble backward, his survival instincts screaming at him to flee, but his limbs wouldn't obey. The alpha presence was so strong it was physically paralyzing, a phenomenon known as the command that locked in Omega's muscles to prevent flight. Who? A voice emerged from the shadows at the far end of the hall. It was a rasp, deep and broken, dripping with menace. Who sent you? No one, Lysander whispered, his voice barely audible. I'm just hiding. Liar. Lightning flashed, illuminating the room for a split second. Lysander gasped. Sitting on a makeshift throne of crates and debris, surrounded by shattered medical equipment, was a man. He was massive, his broad shoulders straining against a black military tack suit that had been shredded across the chest. Blood, dark and copious, soaked his side, pooling on the floor beneath him. His hair was wet and matted, falling over eyes that glowed with a predatory, gold luminescence in the dark. But it was the face that stopped Lysander's heart. He knew that face. Every citizen of the Neo sector knew that face. It was plastered on propaganda posters and whispered about in fear-mongering tales told to children. General Kalen Thorne, the wolf of the borderlands. The man who had single-handedly decimated the Southern Rebellion. He was a war hero to some, a butcher to others, and the sworn enemy of the aristocratic circle. Lysander had just fled. Rumor had it he was dead, killed in a coup 3 days ago. Clearly, the rumors were wrong. You smell. Kalen's voice hitched, a growl tearing through his throat as he clutched his bleeding side. You smell like the city. Like perfume and lies. He tried to stand, but his legs gave out, and he slumped back, snarling in frustration. The pheromones spiked, a wave of aggression that made Lysander whimper involuntarily. I'm leaving, Lysander stammered, forcing his body to move against the crushing pressure. I didn't know. I'll leave. Stop. The single word cracked like a whip. Lysander froze. If you open that door, Kalen gritted out, the drones will pick up my thermal signature. They are scanning for you, but they will find me. And if they find me, he let out a harsh, dry laugh. I will kill everyone in this sector before I let them take me back. The threat wasn't a boast. It was a statement of fact. What do you want? Lysander asked, his voice trembling. Water, Kalen rasped. And binding. Lysander hesitated. Helping Kalen Thorne was treason. It was a death sentence. But walking back out that door into Silas's arms was a fate worse than death. And looking at the general, the most feared alpha in the world, now reduced to a bleeding, shivering mess, Lysander felt a strange, inexplicable tug in his chest. A resonance. He moved cautiously into the darkness. Where? Pack. On the floor. Lysander found the discarded medical pack. He approached the general slowly, like one approaches a trapped tiger. Up close, the sheer size of the man was daunting. Even seated, Kalen towered over him. The heat radiating from his body was intense, a fever burning through him. This is going to hurt, Lysander whispered, finding a canister of biofoam and a needle driver. Kalen looked up. His golden eyes locked onto Lysander's pale blue ones. For a moment, the aggression faltered, replaced by a confused recognition. He inhaled sharply, his nostrils flaring as he took in Lysander's scent. Rain, fear, and beneath it, the delicate aroma of night-blooming jasmine. Do it, Kalen growled, tilting his head back, exposing the thick column of his throat. Lysander worked quickly. He cleaned the jagged wound on Kalen's side, a nasty laceration likely caused by a vibration blade. As he worked, he noticed the strange discoloration around the wound. Purple veins spiderwebbing out. Poison, Lysander murmured. Neurotoxin, Kalen corrected through gritted teeth. My own lieutenant. Slipped it into my drink. Supposed to paralyze me. Make me easy to transport. Why didn't it work? Because I'm not easy to kill. Kalen's hand shot out, gripping Lysander's wrist. His skin was scorching hot. Why are you here, Omega? A pretty thing like you. Dressed in wedding silk. Running through the dead zone. Lysander didn't pull away. He couldn't. The heat of Kalen's hand was grounding. I am not a thing. And I am not pretty. I am a fugitive. From whom? Lord Silas. Kalen's eyes narrowed. The grip on Lysander's wrist tightened, not in anger, but in surprise. Silas? The senator? The man who advocates for the Omega subjugation laws. The man who was supposed to be my husband 2 hours ago. Lysander spat, the bitterness leaking into his voice. Kalen studied him, really looked at him, for the first time. He saw the bruise blooming on Lysander's cheekbone, a parting gift from his father for hesitating at the altar. He saw the terror etched into the fine lines of his face, and the steel hidden behind the tears. He hit you, Kalen said softly. The rage in his scent shifted. It wasn't directed at Lysander anymore. It was a protective, encompassing fury. He did more than that, Lysander whispered. He tried to break me. And yet, Kalen released his wrist and touched the ruined silk of the suit. You are here. Unbroken. For now. A sudden mechanical screech echoed from outside. The heavy thud of boots hitting the pavement. They were close. They found the service in trance, Kalen hissed. He tried to rise, but the neurotoxin was still fighting his system. He stumbled, falling to one knee. Lysander instinctively caught him, his slender frame buckling under the general's weight. You can't fight them like this. I have to, Kalen snarled. I won't hide behind an Omega. You're not hiding, Lysander said, a desperate plan forming in his mind. You're waiting. For what? For the poison to clear. How long? 10 minutes. Maybe 15 if I burn through my metabolism. I can buy you 10 minutes. Kalen looked at him like he was insane. You? You're trembling so hard you can barely stand. They want me, Lysander said, his voice gaining strength. They want the runaway bride. If I go out there. If I distract them. No. Kalen's rejection was instant. Silas's men. They aren't gentle. I know. Lysander looked at the door. But if they storm this place, they'll kill you while you're down. If I go out, they'll hesitate. They have orders to bring me back alive. Why would you do this? Kalen asked, his gaze intense. We are strangers. My family destroyed yours during the Unification Wars. I am the enemy. Lysander looked back at the Alpha. In the darkness, with the rain hammering down, he didn't see a monster. He saw the only person who had looked at him with something other than lust or contempt in years. The enemy of my enemy, Lysander whispered, is my only hope. Before Kalen could stop him, Lysander turned and ran for the door. He burst out into the alleyway, the rain soaking him instantly. Here, he screamed. I'm here. 3 blinding spotlights hit him simultaneously. Lysander threw his hands up, blindingly white against the dark ruins. Target acquired, a mechanical voice boomed. 4 figures emerged from the gloom. Elite guards wearing the crest of House Silas. They carried stun batons and containment collars. Lord Silas will be pleased. The lead guard sneered, stepping forward. He was a beta, thick-necked and cruel. He was worried you damaged yourself, little bird. Don't touch me, Lysander warned, backing up until his back hit the rusted metal of the warehouse door. Or what? The guard laughed. You'll cry? Grab him. 2 guards lunged. Lysander kicked out, catching one in the shin, but the other grabbed his hair, yanking his head back with a brutal jerk. Lysander screamed as the containment collar was snapped around his neck. It hummed with electric energy, suppressing his pheromones, turning him numb. Trussed up tight, the guard muttered, running a hand down Lysander's soaked flank. Maybe we teach him a lesson before we bring him back? Silas won't mind a few bruises if the face is pretty. Lysander squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for the blow. It never came. A sound tore through the air. A wet, meaty tear. The guard holding Lysander's hair suddenly went rigid. He gagged, blood bubbling from his lips, and then slumped forward, a black tactical knife buried to the hilt in the base of his skull. The other guard spun around, weapons raised. The warehouse door groaned. Metal shrieked as it was torn from its hinges not by machinery, but by a force of nature. Kalen Thorne stepped out into the ring. He wasn't stumbling anymore. The neurotoxin had burned away, fueled by a rage so potent it was practically visible. His golden eyes were slits of burning phosphorus. His pheromones flooded the alley, a crushing wave of dominance that brought the beta guards to their knees, choking on the sheer density of his power. I believe, Kalen said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in Lysander's chest, that he told you not to touch him. Th. Thorne, the lead guard stammered, backing away. Impossible. You're dead. I got better, Kalen said. He moved with a speed that blurred the eye. He was a whirlwind of violence. He didn't use a weapon. He used his hands. A snap of a wrist, a shatter of a knee. It was brutal, efficient, and terrifying. Within 30 seconds, 3 guards were unconscious or incapacitated. Only the leader remained. He scrambled back, fumbling for his radio. Central. I need backup. I have. Kalen was on him. He grabbed the man by the throat and lifted him one-handed off the ground, slamming him into the brick wall. You have nothing, Kalen snarled, his face inches from the guards. Tell Silas this. Tell him the Vein Omega is under the protection of the Northern Wolf. Tell him if he sends another dog after my territory, I will burn his house to the ground with him inside it." He dropped the man. "Run." The guard didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled away into the dark, terrified sobs echoing off the wet walls. Silence returned to the alley. Kalen turned slowly. The feral light in his eyes dimmed, but the intensity remained. He looked at Lysander, who was sliding down the wall, clutching the collar around his neck. Kalen approached him. He didn't tower over him this time. He knelt. The muddy, blood-soaked ground didn't matter to him. "Hold still," Kalen murmured. He reached out. His fingers, deadly weapons only moments ago, were surprisingly gentle as they brushed Lysander's neck. He gripped the electronic lock of the collar. With a grunt of exertion, metal groaned against metal. Kalen ripped the containment collar apart with his bare hands and tossed it aside. Lysander gasped as the air rushed back into his lungs, his scent flooding the space between them. "Jasmine and Rain." "Why?" Lysander breathed, looking at the man who had just slaughtered a squad for him. "Why claim me? You said we were enemies." Kalen reached out, his thumb tracing the bruise on Lysander's cheek. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through Lysander, a connection that went deeper than fear, deeper than gratitude. It was the pull of the fated. "I lied," Kalen said, his voice rough. "And you bought me 10 minutes. In my world, a life for a life is the only law that matters." "I have nowhere to go," Lysander whispered. "I can't go back to the city." "I know." Kalen stood up and offered his hand. It was scarred, dangerous, and large. "I have a dropship waiting 3 clicks north. I'm going back to the borderlands to retake my command." He paused, looking down at Lysander. "It's cold in the north. It's dangerous. But no one will ever touch you there without my permission. Come with me, Lysander." It was a proposition. Not of marriage, but of alliance. Of protection. And perhaps something more. Lysander looked at the hand. He looked back at the city that had chewed him up and spat him out. He thought of Silas and the cage waiting for him. Then he looked at the wolf. Lysander reached up and took Kalen's hand. "Take me away," Lysander said, "and teach me how to bite back." Kalen pulled him up, pulling him close against his chest. The heat was overwhelming, intoxicating. "I'll do more than that," Kalen promised, his lips brushing Lysander's ear. "I'll give you the teeth to tear them apart." And that is how the wolf stole the bride, not to devour him, but to sharpen him into a weapon. If you enjoyed seeing Kalen destroy those who dared to touch what is his, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you run into the arms of a dangerous beast to escape a cruel husband? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Kneeling in muddy alley, silver hair messy, wearing torn white wedding suit, looking up with vulnerable but defiant expression, pale skin, blue eyes. Man 2. Standing protectively over man 1, massive muscular build. Dark military tactical gear shredded at chest, blood on side. Glowing golden eyes, black hair wet from rain, extending a scarred hand. Background is dark cyberpunk industrial alleyway, heavy rain, neon lights reflecting on wet pavement, defeated guards in shadows, dramatic cinematic lighting, steam rising, atmospheric, emotional, intense gaze.